Well, hello, friends. Hey, my name is Crimsonclad. You were just here for Meadows and Makers with Greg, making stuff, a fabulous show that always puts me to shame. And I'm so happy to see so many of you guys starting to pop in. I see people hanging out on YouTube and all over the place, which is really cool because I have a guest today. You guys have been mentioning how much, oh my God, she's nude. Oh, I guess it kind of does look like that. Well, that's rude, but you know what? That's fine. It's warm here on the West Coast, but let's focus for a second. I have a fabulous guest. You guys were mentioning how much fun you thought these interviews were, people who are using the blockchain, who are involved in the NFT space, the OGs of digital art and photography. So I happen to have exactly one of those. So let me flip over and you will see the very fabulous Lars is here. And we're going to get started with the show today. So you can see he's in his very, very sensual photography boudoir dungeon space. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking about all sorts of things, Hive and beyond. I know you're involved in some cool blockchain projects, and you've been a mainstay of blockchain photography. I think most people who have been around the chain have seen your work. You want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody. Firstly, where do I see, can I see chats anywhere? Is that like a
can.
thing?
It's a little tricky.
Okay.
Welcome to the insanity. Let me ping you in the chat room, but it's called MSP Waves Audience. And then for anybody
Audience,
who's
I saw
watching,
that.
yeah, and I just pinged you there. But so for anyone who might be watching, whether it's Twitch or YouTube or Vim or any of the other websites we're live on, you can chat wherever you are. It'll all relay through. We're one big fun group here.
Yeah, this is cool. I've never done this. I've been interested in it, and because like obviously, like, well, the whole setup here was part of a I don't know, it was a necessity because this used to be a really, really boring like white spare room with just a ton of boxes and stuff in it. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, well, shit, I'm gonna be doing a lot of Zoom calls, and at that point, I got blasted with a lot of people wanting to do podcasts and everything just because we were all gonna be inside. So I took some time and money, and I just like turned this into a studio. I bought a bunch of equipment, and I already had the camera and everything. But then the next step was like trying to figure out good ways to do just good ways to do like kind of chat, and like this whole setup is like really, Discord freaks me out. I think I've hit a threshold where I'm like I turned 40, so like when I log into Discord, I just get hit with like the serotonin levels in my brain just go off the chart because there's so much to look at.
Are you telling me you've gone full boomer?
I think I'm getting there. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't even claim like to be a cool old guy because I'm in the blockchain space, because like my mom is 60 and she owns NFTs. So there's like no safe harbor for old nerds anymore.
Well, I think that's fabulous. Now, I mean, I think probably where we should start is sort of an overview of how you found, we like to call it the legacy code around here, Steam, but how you kind of found your way to the blockchain, because I think anyone who's ever been around Hive, around any of the old interfaces on Steam, any of the photography aspects of sort of the blockchain space and social blockchain has seen some of your work. And so now it sounds like did your mom find it because, you kind of lured her in, or is she just way cooler than you?
She's pretty cool. She's she finds her way. Like I'm actually kind of like a fourth generation like tech nerd, like all the way through my whole family. Like there's always been this like thing with like early adoption technology. So I'm not like I guess I'd be third generation. My son is fourth generation, but yeah, we've always been pretty like technologically literate. And I found the legacy code through my friend Mark Bailey. He's on Hive as Mada, M-A-D-A.
Okay.
And he it's a funny story. Like he's one of the few friends I have that's just so smart that if it's something in tech, or if it's something in technology, I'll just blindly listen to his advice. And he had created an account there in that original place, and he ended up like saying like, would you join just so you could upvote me? And I had no idea what he was talking about, so I was just like, sure, you know, I just blindly listened, and I just followed, and I signed up. And he's like, you should really do an introduction post on there. And I was like, okay, all right. So I posted like some, thinking it'd just be like a social network kind of alternative to Facebook. Actually, what I in my mind, I remember the thing I had was Elo. Do you remember Elo?
No.
Elo was this like short-lived like trend where like they were trying to pull the Facebook crowd away, but there was nothing there. It was not fun. But they had like basically a gated community thing where you had to have invites to get in.
Oh yeah.
And I thought it was gonna be like that. So I get there, I make my introduction post, and within like a few hours, I made like $3,700. And
yeah, it's not so bad,
and
right?
and it's funny because it said at the bottom, it said like 3680 or something like that. And I remember walking up to Mark and I'm being like, so yeah, I know this isn't like money, but what is it, like coupons? And he's like, no, that's money. And I was like, well, right. I know in the sense it's money, but it's like points. And he's like, no, that's real money. And I was like, fuck you. And he eventually like walked me through he did the whole thing. At the time it was Shapeshift. I ended up sending my Steam through that into long story short, 2 days or 3 days later, it actually showed up my account. I was just like, that was my red pill. I was done. I was like, all in. That was blockchain for the rest of my life.
That's a lot of us ended up coming to the space somewhere similar. And it's quite funny because, you know, it's morphed so far beyond that. And that's one of the things that we talk about on this show a lot is, you know, in this space, a lot of people are looking to get rich quick. And the NFT space right now is kind of being seen that way from, you know, the outside. And well, that's kind of a big exciting thing that's happening. Most of us that have been here, you know, since 2016, 2017, we've seen some of those original NFT projects. We know that there are game assets and entire ecosystems beyond just, I drew Nyan Cat and now I'll never have to work again, which is pretty cool and pretty exciting. So, you know, you're one of our artists on NFT Showroom. You're involved in a bunch of the other ETH NFT platforms. You know, today is your show. You know, we often talk about the Hive blockchain, but we talk about disruptive technology. We talk about art and the retro future and just cool aesthetic stuff too. So I know you've got a lot of projects on the go. You had some topics that you wanted to hit today. One of the things that I definitely would love to talk about is you did this really cool drop of your Hive drones to a bunch of people in the NFT space on Showroom. So maybe we want to talk a little bit about that. I know probably Wax, you've got some stuff going on. So, I mean, the world is your oyster. There's lots of people here who all want to hear what it is you're doing and how they can come along.
Sure. I got a lot to probably say on that. I mean, I've sort of broken the chains of like a 9-to-5 job a long time ago. Like I've been working for myself for about 12 years.
Cheers.
And also like this constant hustle to try to figure out like where the next thing is. And so it's kind of great because with blockchain, like I feel like I've always sort of been ahead of that a little bit, you know, like I've always kind of had a leg up on friends of mine that were also working for themselves. Hey, there it is. There's that's the little drone that I just did.
Yeah.
In the chat. Sorry, I get really distracted easily by stuff like that.
No worries. But, and this is hard learning to watch the chat. So what I recommend is you kind of
don't look at it.
Focus on your story and then flick your eyes down every like couple minutes, because otherwise, I'll warn you now, I'm not saying everybody here is a little rowdy, but sometimes, and you can't see them all, I can see people are watching on a number of different platforms. You've got all the people in Discord. Sometimes they get a little sassy and things start flying around chat.
I'm from the East Coast. I'm fine with sassy. Like I have pretty thick skin. No one's gonna hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I'll stick to it. The thing is, with the job situation is like once I kind of broke off the whole situation, like working for an actual company. I started working for myself, and I did like photography, and I did a few other things. But the blockchain world was this great opportunity to almost like beta test something that like all my other friends would eventually find out about. I got to do it early. And that was basically what Steam It was back in the day. I ended up making, well, I mean, I don't know when you joined, but it was nuts in the early days, like 2016. Like it was not uncommon to see posts hitting like 4 or 5 grand.
Oh yeah, the makeup tutorial, Roland's
Oh man.
amazing also makeup tutorial. I joined after that. So I'm a 2017 baby. And it's quite funny because I actually started my journey in ETH because I'm from Vancouver. And so a lot of sort of the ETH development and ETH interest is here on the West Coast. And at that time, CryptoPunks was just becoming a little baby project over here. So I got into sort of everything with ETH. Then I discovered Bitcoin, fell in love with Bitcoin. And then somebody said, oh, well, also there's a social media where you can share stuff and you can earn some crypto. And for me, that was like, well, I've discovered I freaking love crypto. So all in.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to come here and share some pictures and see how that goes. And then I got sucked into the blockchain and I've never left. And, arguably good and bad.
Yeah. Now my introduction to all of it was actually Steam It. So like it was actually a cool thing because I'm sure there's probably a lot of Dan hate in this chat, but like one thing Dan is so good at, in my opinion, is like figuring out human incentives. And I think that might be because he's used to I think he thinks of humans as like bugs in the code.
Yeah.
Well, I think he thinks like, okay, like these human beings are not doing what I want them to do. How do I fix that bug? And but the incentives is a good way to do it. One of the things I really loved about him was like, I've told this anecdote before, but my friend Brian, he's on Hive as Tarot by Fergus, and actually he's really active right now. So he's in Serbia. He took this like life journey to Serbia, so he's there right now. So if the chat's able to like pull him up and like post a link, that'd be awesome. But it's Tarot by Fergus, and awesome dude. But he's not like a inherently altruistic guy. Like you don't see him just walk out handing out money. And when he first joined Steam It, he was really interested in, like the rest of us, just making some money for posting. But it wasn't long before he actually acquired enough Steam power that he was able to start making other people like 2 or 3 cents with his upvote. And that was the thing he was most excited about. He's like, I just made this person like 5 cents. And that was awesome. Like, and that really made me realize, like, man, Dan really understands a lot of how humans interact. And like is able to kind of make us resist our kind of more reptilian brain. And but it was also my introduction to DPOS, so that was great too, because and I have a bit of a bias now because I'm sorry to like, I mean, you're also a Leo and I'm a Leo, so we're gonna like, I hope this doesn't turn into a clash, but like I actually hate ETH. I actually hate ETH. I think,
and
like,
that's what, that's okay though, because there's a lot
I shouldn't
about
say I hate
ETH
it.
that's trash now.
I love the community enthusiasm. The community enthusiasm around ETH is awesome, and I love seeing some of the projects that are built on it. Just I feel like it's a technological dead end.
Yeah.
And that's like, again, like when you're kind of indoctrinated into this like DPOS world and you see like how much more efficient it is, it kind of just affects you. And then with I was like early on with EOS. I was like on the zero distribution of EOS, so I was like deep into that. I watched it go all the way up to like $28 and then straight back down to like $2, and I held all of it the whole time.
That's how you know you're a crypto OG. That first roller coaster hill, that's make or break in crypto. If you haven't had one of those, you need one. It's part of the battle hardening process.
Right. Yep. So, but anyway, it's getting back to the NFT thing. So like, with like Steam It, I basically would post my photography, which is like that at the time, that was the biggest part of my career. But I would, deep down, what I really wanted to do was comics. And I've always like made the joke that like I must be the only dude in the world that photographs like beautiful women in lingerie all over the world and secretly just wants to be drawing comics. Like that's my dream job. I would give it all up. So when I had time, I would basically post illustration comic stuff. I used to run a contest on Steemit called Trial by Comics, and that was fun. That was like a really cool community building exercise. But I'd get paid for it, and I mean, sometimes it would be $20, and sometimes it would be a lot. And there were like these. Do you remember? Does anybody remember like the period of time when I think the Korean exchanges were pumping Steam dollars?
That's definitely like, not still happening exactly at this second right now.
It was really bad. It was like they'd realized that Steam dollars had a they realized Steam dollars had a bottom, but they didn't have a top. So like they wouldn't really go much below $1. But man, could they pump those things up to like $28. So you would do a post, like one of the greatest echo chambers of money that I did that. The greatest like echo chambers I've ever seen was like I ended up using Steam rewards to buy a iPad Pro, like a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Yep. And I wrote this whole blog post about it. And I was like, oh, this thing's amazing. I bought it with Steam dollars. And I actually included like the little like transactions at the Apple store and my TX from like block trades and all this shit, just to prove that I've made the purchase. And the post made $409 at a time when Steam dollars were worth like $28. And I actually made more money from the post about buying the iPad than the iPad actually cost. And I was just like, this shit's it's not sustainable. Like it can't just keep going on like this. And it didn't, but it was Wild West. And NFTs are kind of like that now. Like NFTs are sort of the Wild West right now.
It's pricing in that market for sure. And I mean, this is something that I think is really exciting, especially that we have more people like you who are like, hey, what about comics? What about real life action figures? What about, representations of physical land masses in the world, transported into the metaverse? So NFTs are this new horizon. It shouldn't be that surprising that it's gone a little wacky. And of course, there will be some corrections and the market has to price itself in. But this excitement and this buzz and everything that we're experiencing right now, and you know what? Doge is representative of this too. People want to have fun. They want to be part of something. And yeah, if they're like, holy shit, look at all this money, that is sort of a really easy way to grab eyeballs. And so, Hive doesn't.
Man. Speaking of grabbing eyeballs, I cannot, like, I'm still wrapping my head around the every time I log into Twitter, the whole like just constant drumbeat of like, whose NFT am I buying today? Got 2.3 ETH. Who am I gonna spend it on? It's just like, it's so over the top right now. It's just ridiculous.
But when you think about, maybe this is sort of a sign of the times that we live in. When you think about these people who, ETH, whether you like it or not, if you look at it next to something like Bitcoin, the kids that held ETH for a long time as it dipped back down under 100, the bear market was shitty to everyone. And the people that held now in this new space, in a time where the world in many ways is shut down to them, people's finances are more uncomfortable than ever. All of a sudden, you have new money. And you don't just have new money, you have life-changing money. And so it's one of those things that's kind of like 50-50, because you totally want to see that money coming back into the ecosystem, making new excited artists who come and just try one piece and get hooked. And, that feedback loop is awesome. But yeah, Julia, everybody else, you're so right, because Twitter's just like, I have lots of money, come worship me. And it's a little... it's a lot and tacky, it's tough.
I don't think I think the majority of that is not real people. Like, I don't think it's real money. I think basically just trying to get those sweet follows,
Yeah, and I'm no good at that.
Me neither. I'm not
I've
either.
Been absolute trash at it.
I've been I'm very much I'll let my art speak for myself. I'm not really big about self-promotion like that, but You're right though. It's a sign of the times. And one thing that, like you said, keeping it in the ecosystem, in some ways, I actually feel like a big part of why we're still in this sustained bull run is actually because of NFTs. Because a lot of those new wealth and the new millionaires and things like
Absolutely.
that, if you take it out, you're gonna pay on it. And I think they're looking for safe harbor to like kind of put a lot of that new money into something that's not going to be like necessarily like a different token or anything, and they could buy art. So I actually attribute a lot of this like sustained bull run to art and NFTs, which is amazing because that's just like where I am.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But you did mention I should actually talk briefly about the NFT showroom thing, because firstly I will say I love Julia. Like I've seen Julia. Julia has worked
She's our
through
alien queen. I mean, the
she's
reason we're
amazing.
making this is because we're all both awe-inspired by the work that she does, and we're both in hope of getting and in fear of getting a tentacle probing. NFT Showroom absolutely has Julia's heart.
Wait, let's back up there to the tentacle probing thing reference.
Oh, well, she's our alien queen, you know. Yeah.
So we're going like hentai with that reference, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
okay.
We've got our Nasher. He's our tentacle alien eyeball. But yeah, in general, we just assume that you make Julia happy, and you will either get the probing you want or you'll get the probing you deserve.
Ah, okay, I see. Well, let me tell you. Let me give you a quick story about Julia. Just like her dedication to like whatever, like any project that Julia decides to be a part of, like they have no idea how lucky they are, because like. Oh, yeah. I watched Julia through her work with Ono. Do you remember Ono? That big pile of shit Ono? Ono was such a fucking mess, and like Julia just like there'd be like 2:30 in the morning and I couldn't get my stupid Ono tokens, like whatever. And I'd send a message to Julia because she was part of this like community ambassadorship thing.
She was a super
and she'd like
Ono
I'd send it. Yeah, I'd send a text at like, or a little DM or whatever on Ono at like 2:34 in the morning, and like 2:37 Julia would like write me back with this like list of things that I have to do, and like every time it worked. I mean, she just knows what she's doing. Oh yeah, PTSD about Ono, no shit. And that was the saddest thing, is when that thing basically turned into like what we all kind of suspected it was, like just a big festering pile of burning poop. I felt so bad for like Julia. I think, do you remember Joe? The guy that started Pixios, he was really involved in that too.
Yeah, there were a couple. I know Stella was big into it. I know poor Clay was in there as well. Like, and we're so lucky here because, you're in MSP Waves right now. This part of PalNet and, NFT Showroom. A lot of this is a group of us that literally met because of the blockchain. So, I mean, I've been very lucky to not only know Julia for a couple years now, but sometimes she even lets me fly over there and visit her. I even sometimes get to hug her. But I've been working with her on projects for ages now, from PalNet to NFT Showroom to pretty much everything around the chain. And the whole team is fantastic. Obviously, Julia, we're just going to continue to shower you with love. But it's been really exciting at the heart of it. Yeah.
So legit, here was my plan. So it was really frustrating me to see so much money and enthusiasm and interest in ETH. For what it is, it's fine. But like, it frustrated me that we as a Hive community, I feel like more than half of what makes Hive what it is artists and creatives and like writers and poets and musicians and everything. And that's just always been my interpretation of the Hive blockchain, was just art and creativity. So to know that we're moving into this trend where people are willing to spend stupid money on art, it seemed, and to have a blockchain that's so technologically superior than ETH, I just was like, why is there, and I actually, going back to Julia, I said to her, why are there not more people here like buying and selling and just making tons of money? And she had a perfect response. She's like, the artists aren't here because the collectors aren't here, and the collectors aren't here because the artists aren't here.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where I was like, you know what? Like, if I want to see a change in that, I'm going to try to be the change myself. So I actually made a commitment at that moment. And it's weird because I do see it's like a beautiful topless siren on the edge of the rocks, like calling me to come close. And it's when I see all the money that's happening on ETH. And then I see other little things like, ooh, I got one foundation invite. Anybody want it? And I'm always like, maybe. But like, I always resist that because I'm like, no, really. I honestly, principally think it's like a dead end. Like, and I keep hearing everything about like ETH, second layer bullshit and like 2.0 and all this stuff. But like, I don't know. I haven't seen anything really happen in a while. So I'm just, look, Hive is amazing. It's fast, it's free. And like we are a consortium of artists and creatives. So what I ended up doing was I started thinking about this project. And I mean, obviously anything Hive related is going to sell better than something not Hive related. So I got this idea where I wanted to just do a collection of basically 5 roles that you would normally see within a bee colony. Mm-hmm. So it's basically, and I was going to break it down in respects to however many of those roles you see in the Hive. So the drone that I did that somebody shared earlier, that one is just, I made 100 of them and I just airdropped them to anyone that wanted one. Basically anyone who put their Hive account on Twitter. And the guard is the second one, and that one I think I minted 50 of those, but it's going to keep getting, I got 3 more to go. I'm going to do a cleaner. Yeah, the cleaner, which is an actual role. And this is even more cool, I found out. In an actual Hive colony or a bee colony, there is a undertaker. There's actually a bee whose role it is to drag the dead bees out of the hive and cast them out. So I'm going to draw this like, really gnarly looking like Hive like undertaker, but he's going to be carrying like a dead one to the left, and he'll have like a dead one over his shoulder. And but then each one of those is going to get significantly less. It'll be like 25 for the cleaner, 10 for the undertaker, and then of course there'll be a queen.
Of course.
And I'll do like a 1-of-1 colored version of the queen, and I'm gonna try to sell it for a lot of money. I'm gonna sell it for like over $1,000, because I asked Julia straight up. I was like, "What is the most expensive NFT that's ever been sold on NFT Showroom?"
It was a Cody
and I don't remember. Yeah, and that's my goal. Is I want to sell it for more than that. I want to sell it for more than that. Not because I mean like, not even. I wouldn't mind making some money, but mostly because I want to like kickstart the ecosystem. If like you can create a project that's like cool enough, and actually like the oh dude, I forget his name. Oh, what was his name? There a guy did buy the 1-of-1 color guard off me for a lot. Like, I mean, I think he spent like $200 some on it, but that was back when Hive, before the pump. So he bought it when like Hive was like 10 cents. So, I mean, now that probably is close to like a $600-700 NFT.
Totally. And that's one of the beauties of the blockchain we always forget to kind of remind people is we're trying to move away from wholly thinking in fiat. One hive is one hive. And if you're staying around the ecosystem and you're moving around the ecosystem, whether you're buying in, you're earning in, you're staking long-term, you're creating and exchanging value through one of the games or through NFT Showroom, all of a sudden it actually really starts working when you start thinking of being inside of the community. And I want to give a shout out to Bricks Omi Taylor. I haven't seen you in years. I'm so stoked that you found us. Welcome to the show. So yeah, there's lots of cool prospects going on, and I really love this idea. And actually this is something that maybe we can kind of transition into. You didn't ask me to talk about it, but hey, it's my show. This is a struggle for almost anyone coming into, yes, NFT Showroom, but art in general. And so what's happening right now is NFTs are wild and everybody's excited and everybody goes, I'm going to get my kids fucking scribble and I'm going to NFT that. I'm going to take photos outside and I'm going to draw a duck on it and I'm going to NFT that. And that's fine. But coming into an ecosystem where you're learning what it is like to be an artist, to shill and market your own work in a way that's sustainable and authentic, pricing your work, And this is going to be a hard thing in a world where we're taught to think in fiat, and then you enter a crypto world. How do you price your work? And this is an important aspect that for NFT Showroom, we've got a lot of people, this is their first experience with crypto. It's their first experience with making or selling or buying art. And what we've seen is a lot of people are so community centric that they tend to actually underprice their art. And of course, that becomes sort of something that sets the floor for everyone. So for you, having worked in this industry, whether it's photography, I mean, I know that doing freelance photography, freelance web design, pricing your work can be damn hard, especially when it's, look at all these people who inspire me, I love them, or I don't know what to do when there isn't a like fiat dollar value. Do you have some advice for that, given that you've been pretty successful in working into this space?
Well,
it's a hell of a question. Surprise!
No, it's okay. No, it's great. I love these kind of questions. I just, really, it doesn't matter if it's NFTs because this is a new trend or just life in general, trying to make it as an artist. Like that's
Absolutely.
Pretty ubiquitous across just life, is just trying to find where that point is. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, just like The Office, and it's not a great place. It's like uneducated, working class, like super, religious, and it's just not a great place. But it used to be a coal mining town, and obviously we're not like super dependent on that like we were in the 1920s. So it was depressed, And I grew up, yeah, right there, Dwight Schrute. I was kind of like conditioned in a way to be poor. So, I grew up that way. And when I started like getting outside of where I lived, I mean, I eventually moved to Philadelphia, and then from there I moved to Minneapolis. But when I started working as an independent artist, I had no idea what to charge. And I started around like $300 per shoot, and I'd spend like 5 hours or 6 hours and then weeks and weeks just kind of like editing, so by the time it was all said and done, I was probably making $2 an hour on the photos I worked on. And eventually you just learn that it's unsustainable. When I was like flying myself to LA and stuff, when I started working out there, I'd fly out there, I'd rent a car, I'd get a couple of hotels, usually had to be like fancy hotels because that's where I was shooting, at the time.
Yep.
And when you do that for 10 days and come home and have no money to show for it, you were just like, eventually something has to change. Yep. And eventually I did start bumping my rate up, but every single time I did, I thought for sure I would never get hired again. And I eventually found out that the ceiling for my genre, which is the pinup genre, was about $1,200. That's what people were willing to spend on a shoot. And so that it was just a trial and error thing, but definitely I had that poor brain mentality to start. And the thing I wonder with NFTs specifically is like there are not those kind of barriers. You know what I mean? A lot of it's very casual. It's like, the people that have been successful, and I don't mean like people successful, but like, regular people that we know, mutual friends and stuff. It's just like kind of like working on something at home and then maybe eating $150 in gas fees and then, selling it for, $1,200 or something like that. So I don't think there's a lot of the same sort of barriers, but I see trend wise, I see this thing happen where I see really, really outstanding artists over or undervaluing their work.
Absolutely.
Especially on NFT Showroom. And I do hope that long term that's going to actually be a benefit, because I think eventually as the ETH enthusiasm starts to peter out, a lot of those collectors are going to start looking elsewhere. And when someone with a lot of ETH or money comes to NFT Showroom, they're just going to be like, holy shit, like this is a gold mine,
Well, and so, we've seen a bit of that. One thing that I can say that we are lucky, and admittedly, we've got one more kind of big update, and then we can kind of go whole hog into this, which is auctions. But what we have seen is people are starting to look elsewhere. ETH has a lot of second layer options now, and there are, other chains working on it. And yeah, NFT Showroom, we've had a couple people come into the ecosystem and go, oh, holy shit, my ETH goes so far. there's no gas fees. And they come in, and this is like, I don't even know how to explain it. Do you remember that old TV show, Supermarket Sweep? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Where people in like the 80s are like screeching and running down the aisle, and like their arms, they're like sweeping all of the like, what is it, the lamb and the obus forms off the shelf into their cart. We have a couple collectors who once a week, once every 2 weeks, they come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I fucking love this. And they just wipe clean all of the fabulous stuff that's been doing. And so for me, that goes to show that it is on people's radars. And so like we were talking about earlier, and how you mentioned what Julia was saying, it really comes down to, it's a feedback loop now. Yeah. Each time that a new collector enters, more artists want to impress that collector, but that collector wants to see more new artists. And so it's kind of incredible, the slow burn that's already been happening. But I think once we kind of turn on the jets, it'll be really interesting to watch more people kind of go through that same cycle. And it's going to take kind of interesting, engaged artists and collectors inside the ecosystem to help kind of sell that. And so I always love these really interesting, weird, cool projects that crop up. And I love the idea of, you know, the scarcity that you're building into yours, because it's almost like it's building that anticipation. And I think we're going to start seeing more kind of cool experiments with that. But I'm very happy that you've been experimenting with it too, because it's going to take some people who really kind of love and understand the ecosystem to really underline why it's so great. It's very hard right now when the absolute deluge of media and sort of very surface level attention is being paid to one chain in particular.
Yep, I agree. And I do see the opposite too. I see it, well, and I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a pretentious art prick, even though I probably am going to, but like, I see a lot of that happening the opposite on like some of the, you know, typical like Ethereum, you know, networks for like NFTs. We're just like overpricing shit. I forget her name.
Pixel.
Yeah. Oh fuck! Don't even get me started on the pixels. Oh my god, I fucking hate. So I just had a meeting with. I'm trying to think if I can talk about this. I think I can.
Watch your NDAs.
I can, I think. But yeah, I had a meeting with Topps, and it was a project that they more or less asked if I could do something, and like the reference got me to a point where I concluded, you don't want me to make a pixel art. And he's like, no, not that. And I was like, whew. And he goes, would you have just turned that down if I told you it was pixel art? And I was like, yep, I would have. Absolutely. I like the crypto writer guys. You know the crypto writer guys?
Beautiful. Yeah. But there's some beautiful pixel art. I mean, for those who may watch this back later and may think we are just being like the douchiest of douchebags, there's a very fun guy named Murat Pack, and his new thing is one gray pixel.
I think
one.
That's pretty funny.
Pixel. And I don't know what it's going to go for, but it's going to go for so much.
It's not the pixel art I have an issue with. I don't like, and I mean, this is just like inherently, I just do not like trend chasing.
Yeah.
I just don't like
fair.
it. I feel like the thing.
Yeah.
I know. If I see one more fucking spinning card, I'm going to like barf. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, isn't the whole fun part of being an artist that like you get to just, you know, try to discover new things? Like the authenticity should be, well, and ultimately authenticity is what really will sell your shit. Like Absolutely. If you want to stand out in a sea when the signal to noise ratio is getting to be what it is now, you really have to have something that distinguishes you from the rest of the crowd.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, this is something, and you know, you've probably been around long enough now that you started out in film and moved into digital. I mean, this is something that we see no matter what. This is the path of technology. So even if we're not talking about just art in the NFT space, we are, as a whole, supremely uncreative beings. And so what happens is we have a thing that we like, and we do it in an analog way, and then we design tech to do exactly the same thing as the analog thing. I mean, you had mail, and then you had email. And so we try to recreate the same paradigms over and over.
I always think of digital photography. Remember, like digital photography in the probably would have been late 90s.
Yep.
Early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I remember all my friends, everyone was trying to find the best way to make their digital photos look like analog film. They're like, you see the perfect amount of grain I got here? It looks like it's 400 ISO. Yeah.
But it's true. And so, when we see, okay, hold on, we're paying attention to this space because mad money. We're paying attention to this space because we understand collectibles. But what we understand collectibles to be right now are cards, you know what I mean? We have sort of this predetermined notion, and it's not just what's previously sold inside the NFT space, it's what we've always fucking bought. And so in some ways it's hard to fault an artist for saying, I understand human nature, because isn't that what an artist is in general, is a mirror held up to how ridiculous we are as people. But it's hard to say you can't do it, because if it works, then that's a positive feedback loop. But I agree. And Julia's got my favorite Blender standard bald shiny metallic lady. She pops up a lot. Astronauts floating in space, the upside down astronaut with a skull in there. There are some things that got played out.
That's my man. That's my friend, what's his name, Nick.
And actually, to be fair, Bones and Omens, I have his astronaut in space with the thumbs up in the because I fucking love it. Don't get me wrong.
No, I do too.
But certainly, we're seeing a proliferation of this. The idea is, okay, I'm gonna learn Blender. I'm gonna grab that standard lady body. I'm gonna huck her in a pool of liquid. I'm gonna make a reflection from a neon light, and then I'm gonna put an astronaut in the background. 4 ETH.
Yeah.
And it's kind of okay. So I totally know what you're saying in that it's interesting to see who will start separating themselves out and really exploring what it is that makes them an artist. And, there'll be a piece for everyone. Isn't that the way it goes?
like I was saying earlier about the topless sirens on the edge of the rocks calling me. Like the 3D art is kind of like that, because I'm interested in 3D art. I have there's this great program. If anyone has an iPad or an iPad Pro, I really, really recommend trying it out. It's like $10. It's called Nomad Sculpt, but it's a 3D. It's basically Blender on an iPad that you can use the pencil. And I want to do more stuff like that, but really, again, I have to know what my strength is. And the thing I actually love doing the most, and that's comic book illustration. And that's why the stuff that you see on NFT Showroom is all kind of concept art comic stuff. And it's just what I like. I
I got to pump your tires a little bit, because I really love those clean, inked, just black and white, you don't see a ton of that outside of deviant art or outside of the comic space. And when it's done well, it's spectacular.
Yeah, I agree. And that's just my aesthetic. When I think of the comic books that I buy, and the thing that just draws me, that's why I don't really want to feel like I'm chasing the 3D stuff. I might still mess with the 3D stuff just for fun, but ultimately the thing that I could draw every day, 12 hours a day and not get bored of it is comic book illustration with nice clean inks. Usually very little color, just a splash of color. Some of my favorite books are Batman does this art books, I guess I'd say, is DC releases a lot of these they call them noir. So it's basically they do two different versions. They do one called Unwrapped, which is all the pencils, and it's just the pencil pages. And then the noir ones are basically inked, and I have the what the hell was the first one? It's not Death in the Family. It's a Court of the Owls by Jonathan Glapion is the inker, and he inked all that, and it's just a masterpiece. It's so aspirational. That's where I want to be. Yeah. But again, if you see a trend happen, right now it's this 3D thing, but if you see a trend move towards more two-dimensional kind of comic art, you're gonna see that's just gonna be how it's gonna go. So what I'm saying is find the thing that, like, don't chase, don't chase it. Just find the thing you love and just let it destroy you, like Bukowski said.
Yeah, absolutely. Fly straight into the sun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I love it. Yeah, and for me, it's funny because the Hive blockchain has both empowered me and helped me blossom, but it's also utterly crushed my creativity in that the more time I spend working on Hive community stuff and liaising with exchanges and all of this sort of things, that the background work that has come naturally with my growing fascination with Hive and with that legacy code. I spend less and less time working on digital art, working on photography, which is, that was where I started. And so for me, the NFT space and part of being the NFT showroom team is this weird, I don't even know how to explain it. It is this weird yearning. Every part of me wants to create a platform to empower the people who are great at this stuff to just go nuts, understand owning their own data, their own banking, their own interactions and how they create value. And then also a small part of me is like, oh, I just want to quit and all I want to do is draw all day. All I want to do is draw. And I'm not there yet. So in a lot of ways, I'm watching everybody else as we're working on, sort of the tech side of things. And it's been incredible to see the diversity in the space. As much as we say, yeah, people are chasing trends and, oh Lord, are they? I have started seeing some really incredible, interesting topics come up. I mean, for you, now that you're working on a bunch of different projects and you're moving more towards the comics, like, is there something happening in the NFT space or in, photography or whatever that actually really excites you?
Yes, there is, and I can't talk about it right now.
That's, but that just goes to show you're being successfully integrated into the the chain also.
I work as a lot of people know. I work with EOS Detroit. I'm I'm the art guy there. But we are like, when I looked at the schedule for this conversation, we're like 3 days away from releasing something really big. So like, if we would have done this like next week, and we can do it again,
Absolutely.
And I can actually talk about these things. But yeah, we have some really, really big shit hitting next week, and I cannot wait.
Well, that's fine. You don't have to necessarily go into detail, but I mean, this show doesn't have to be Hive-centric. It often is, and a lot of our audience is from Hive. But, a lot of the audience is also just people who found it because sometimes we play synthwave, or sometimes we talk about spaceships or robots. So, I mean, for me, disruptive technology and sort of some of these strange, weird aspects. I mean, a year ago, we were wondering if we were all going to die, not if we were all going to be spending our stimmies on, pictures of astronauts. So this is, it's further away than we've ever kind of been from reality in some ways, and it's the new reality in others. So, I mean, we don't necessarily only have to talk about Hive. I mean, EOS, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of crossover in the way that the chains sort of operate and sort of their origin stories. So certainly if there's other projects that are kind of interesting to you, or, there's something that you'd wish you are seeing in terms of crossover of the communities or whatever, you spent your stimmies on Crimmies. I wish that we could talk about that too. I mean, the world is your oyster here.
Don't read the chat. Don't read the chat, because you'll get drawn in.
Well, I know, Ed, but I'm the host, and every now and again, I do have to acknowledge all the fabulous people who come out and watch.
You're also seasoned at it. The freaking memes and GIFs are just killing me. Like
they've been good. You have not. Oh, see, there's one right now with me, Cloud Punk, but it's Crim Punk. That's amazing, Pisa. Normally, really cool. You'll see me. I'll fly by in a tin can. There was one I was photoshopped into a tin can in space. Often they feature large dildos. I mean,
nice.
It's you.
I feel like it's. Yeah, I always think it, like, do you remember that show? It was like American Warrior or something like that, where they used to, like, you'd have to run across a bunch of things, and they'd try to knock you off with these giant Q-tips.
It's
that's what the chat.
But the Q-tips are dildos.
Yeah, that's what this chat is like. These, like, it's like, I'm just trying to get through one thought here, and then you see a gerbil eating a piece of cheese. But the yeah, I do have something that is very exciting, and I'm not sure if a lot of the folks listening really are in that world at all, but like I'm really deep in the wax world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like wax is doing some really, really cool stuff. Atomic Hub is basically a front end for the wax blockchain that handles a lot of collectibles and stuff. And there are things I can talk about. I can't talk about stuff that's coming up, but I can talk about things we've already done. And I can tell you a really funny story how this worked. So, as many people may know already, Garbage Pail Kids was released on
Yes.
Wax by
yeah.
Topps, and that was huge. Like we all got super excited. I think I bought like I don't know. I spent way more than I should. Probably like $300-400 on just season one or series one original OS1 cards, and then we got all excited at EOS Detroit. At the time, we were basically just we're just a block producer. But my strategy was to kind of like do more comics and comic book art to try to get people. I mean, ultimately, this was the pitch I told Rob. We were, as with Witnesses on Hive, you're kind of competing for that sweet top 21 witness position, right?
Yep.
And on EOS, it's even more. I don't even know what the word is. I almost said corrupt, but it's complicated, and there's a lot of exchanges that are in the top positions, and it's like, how do you compete as a block producer? How do you compete against freaking like some of these companies that have $50 million budgets to buy servers and all this stuff? So my suggestion was to Rob, I was like, well, there's an attack vector here with art, so let's do it. That could be our Trojan horse. So I basically started pumping out a bunch of comics, and we just released them to the community and stuff. And before you knew it, there was like Brendan Bloomer, like the CEO of Block One, was like retweeting some of our comics and stuff, and it seemed to be working. And then Garbage Pail Kids came out, and me and Rob from EOS Detroit were getting excited, and we were like talking about doing our own kind of spin-off, almost homage to Garbage Pail Kids. And my my proof of concept Garbage Pail Kid was I took a drawing. I basically took Brendan Bloomer from Block One, and I made him as a blooming onion. So it was like a head that was like cut, and there was like all these like slices all out, and it was called Bloomin' Brendan. So I did this like concept, and that was going to be our thing. Well, Rob, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about not promoting ourselves. Like, I'm not really good at that. I was like really insecure about it and shy. It was something fun to laugh at internally, but we didn't want to we didn't want the world to see it or anything. Well, Rob sent it right to Tobin at Topps. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And then a few days later, Tobin's like, you guys want to have a call with Mark, our VP of digital? And I was like, yeah, I guess. Yes. And we had this meeting, and we talked over the project and stuff, and Mark was just like, he said straight up, he's like, how would you like to do like 5 cards that are reimaginings of Series 2? And I'm like, holy shit, like, oh my God, yeah. I was like, I'm on board. So we did it, and it turned out great, and that's turned into several other opportunities. We I don't know if you remember the Bernie Sanders mitten thing. But we did like a Bernie Sanders mitten pack thing, and that actually ended up being one of their most successful drops because it was very, very limited. It was this first one called Burn Ventures, and it was actually a burn event. So the idea was you'd buy these cards, these collectible cards, and I mean, it's just so much different than what's happening on ETH, because like, and I'm not saying one's better than the other, I'm just saying they're different. Like on ETH, it seems to be like more of a fine art based experience. You look like you're walking through a gallery, and if you see something you like, you can buy it. Whereas on Atomic and with Wax, it's more of a collectibles kind of ecosystem.
Totally.
And oh man, that Bernie Sanders this crowd is killing me with these memes. But yeah,
I've
like
got one because there was an account that popped up that was nothing but photoshopping Bernie Sanders into album covers. So there's a fantastic Meshuggah one in the chat now.
Yep.
and
but
I
yeah,
still
so
look for him.
Yeah, so we did Burn Ventures, and that one ended up doing really well. But the idea was if you burned enough of the cards, you actually got a
Burned
certain amount of
Bernie?
points on a leader. Yeah, you had to burn them. But
Feel
can you
burned.
can you do that on Ether? That costs like $600 to burn something, doesn't it?
You have to
It
pay to do everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a
exactly.
transaction. It's a type of transaction.
And the so we ended up having this burn event, and it did really well. And there was like a leaderboard of who had burned the most, and based on those results, you actually would get this secondary set of packs called mittens, and those ones were like entirely done by us. Like that was a full EOS Detroit like project, and it turned out really really good. And even now, if you go on Atomic Hub and you go under GPK tops, like a lot of the most valuable cards in that set were the ones we did. And it's really cool. It's like I'm excited about that because I think art is great, but even in my, what do they call it, meat space life, or like real life, IRL, as the kids are saying now, like I rarely bought art. I would, I'd go to galleries and stuff, but I usually didn't spend that much on art. But I do buy collectibles a lot. I buy cards, I buy comics and things like that. So, what they're doing on Wax with Atomic, and I mean, I'm so into it that that's the project I have the most stake myself in.
Yeah.
I have a lot of
So now this is perfect because we've hit the 1 hour mark. We are halfway through the show, so we'll do a quick reminder that, hey, my name is Crimsonclad. This is CyberBuzz Radio. Lars is here with me today talking about all things cool digital art, photography, NFTs, blockchains, the whole 9 yards. But this is a perfect spot because I have now 2 questions, and we can go in either direction. We can choose along this fork. One being that, we could talk a little bit about value creation. And that's a topic that always comes up for me in the blockchain space because blockchain and crypto are challenging us to start thinking differently about what is valuable. In meat sack world, as you mentioned, we are so used to tying a work hour, like a labor hour, to a fiat dollar, and that's value, and that's what we understand. You exchange one for the other, back and forth. However, that's not the case in this new world. So we could talk a little bit about that and how blockchain's changing how we perceive what is valuable, and the idea of fine art versus collectibles is a really fascinating topic. Or the other one that I thought might be interesting is for a lot of us here inside the Hive ecosystem, or who might have followed up with the EOS ecosystem, you mentioned something very interesting that's different between EOS and Hive. And that is that you have block producers who are essentially either corporate or exchange interests. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's a different thing. And I think there's probably some cool conversation that could be had around, do you want that in an ecosystem? Is that a trustworthiness that's seen from the outside that could draw more people in? Or do you think in this age of decentralize all the things that's a deterrent? And, as someone who's, working on being a block producer in that space, what does that feel like when you've got sort of these big groups that are kind of dominating block production? Because I'm a consensus witness here on Hive. So my partner and I, we run one of the big top 20 crazy witnesses. And that's kind of a big leap from block one. I mean, you got this, or you got block one. So what do you want to talk about? But I like those questions.
Well, I like thinking of the value creation idea. I like it just as a philosophical idea.
Absolutely.
I think art? It's mind blowing to me. Like, I mean, that was I've been schooled in that even more recently because, the work we've done for Tops has made Tops hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's literally just an arrangement of pixels on a blockchain. So I think that's really cool. And, but I guess, at the root of all of this, and I'm going to be a little abstract here, but at the root of all just blockchain in general, the thing that keeps me stuck here is not that I make, a certain amount of money on my posts on Hive every night. And it's nothing like that. I'm just like, it's opened my mind to just a more philosophical world. Like, are you familiar with, Roadscape, right?
I do. I
Roadscape,
consider him a bud, actually.
he's a bud of mine too. He's a close friend, and I told him this once, is like, during the craziness of 2017, when Hive hit, or when we were at $8 or $7 or whatever, I had my Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
self-actualization. I actually,
Okay. Oh.
so I actually had that, and
Chopped out the pyramid.
because
Well done.
I did, and it was because I mean, I would do one post and I'd make enough money to pay all my bills for the whole month. It was insane. It was like unsustainable, but at the time it was nuts.
Yeah.
And after several months of that, I mean, I was always intrigued by things like how people work, and like just bigger picture stuff. What's the universe? What's physics? I always thought about those sort of things. But when you're so constantly bogged down by paying stupid bills, you never really have a chance to go further with that. And then once that barrier was removed, when we were in this like crazy time where, I mean, I took my parents to the Mall of America, and I bought my stepdad an Apple Watch that could do heart monitoring, because he had like a heart issue. And my mom's like, "Don't do it, don't do it. I don't want you to spend that." And I literally showed her on my phone. When we walked out of the store, I made more money than the watch. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the world we were in at that period. Same with that like anecdote I said earlier about like basically doing a post on the iPad Pro. That's the thing, is like most artists prior to self-actualization, they have to strive for years to get to a point where they can actually afford the tools to make the art. And during that like kind of crazy bull run in 2017, I could just, if I needed it, I just got it. It was just there was no barrier. And then it left me more time. But going back to Roadscape is like, obviously after 2017, like moving into 2018, when the crash happened, the huge correction that went straight back down to almost nothing. I told Roadscape, I was like, what really sucks about that? It's a one-way street. Like, once you look over the mountain and you're still poor, like, you can't stop thinking of these sort of things. So that was where I was from that point on. I was poor again, but I just still had to think about big picture.
Yeah, it's definitely Oh, sorry, you're breaking up for me a bit. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh man, look at this.
You're fine.
Look at this.
You're fine. I'm just being a dick.
No, I'm looking
the
at the
Photoshop
chat.
of you. But you know what? That's flattering, because somebody is suggesting, Patient Zero is suggesting, that you are indeed the most interesting man in the world. So
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, isn't that the guy that he doesn't always do something, but when he does do something, it's something else? Isn't that the meme?
Because he is the most interesting man.
What is it? Is it it's bourbon or something like that, or wait?
No, I wish it was bourbon. No, I think it's a beer. Honestly, I think it's
a beer. Okay,
yeah. Dos Equis, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like
man.
it, but
I really am the resident boomer right now, but I'm getting caught.
It's a compliment.
Okay, good. Thanks.
But so let's kind of drill this down, because you said something that is so true, and I think is an important part of sort of, let's call it blockchain adoption, that thing we hate to fucking talk about, because we keep saying it's early, guys, it's early, they're coming, people are coming, we just need the normies, we just need adoption, and all of that is true, but often we kind of miss the mark on what it is that people will adopt. Well, all of a sudden we've entered this time where, maybe you don't understand block production round, and maybe you don't understand an immutable decentralized ledger, but I like looking at art, I like looking at pictures. And so NFTs, especially in sort of the fine art space to start with, that grabbed everybody's attention was, oh, well, even if I don't want to buy an NFT, I like to look at art. And so now people are looking in this direction, but you hit the nail on the head in that there are some people who will spend an immense amount of money on art, or will form a personal connection with an artist. But there are just as many or more people who are totally invested in buying collectibles. Collectibles are arguably an even better path into the hearts of the normie. Maybe I don't get, the one gray pixel for millions of dollars, but I loved baseball cards, and now I've got my giant screen TV and I can look through my collection of Bernie cards or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's something to that. There's something about collectibles that will literally never go away. And how do you see that kind of becoming its own on-ramp into the crypto space?
I actually have, my suspicion is that or my prediction, I guess you'd say, is I actually think the trends that we're seeing on ETH with art, I don't think those are going to last.
Yep.
I think I do think it's a bubble, and I think the extents of the bubble right now are basically Beeple. That's the furthest ranges out. But when that thing pops, and then I mean, you might see ETH art selling in a year for like the type of prices we're seeing on NFT Showroom now. That might just be the thing, which is going to be super devastating, with gas fees then. Assumably sure. gas fees would go down as the network was used less. But I do think the collectibles angle is long term. I do think that's something that's not going to go away, because you're talking something that transcends just art. I mean, you're talking like pop culture.
So I have a tricky question that is a direct follow-up to this. So one of the things in the collectibles world that we love, and we'll talking about tangible collectibles. Now, my sister went through the Beanie Baby phase. My dad is madly in love with, he's got an old 70s Chevy Nova, so he collects all old muscle car stuff. But one of the things that we find with collectibles that becomes really important is preservation over time. And so when we think about like custody of a collectible, we think about how well taken care of is it. This is a tangible thing that maybe it got burned in a house fire. Maybe somebody took this Babe Ruth card and their kid drew a mustache on it. And there are all these ways that a collectible as we know it right now could lose value. What do you think that aspect of value, like what happens to that in a space where your NFT is attached to your wallet? Nothing can change it. It's held in the code and it is preserved perfectly in time. Like there's something amazing about that and very attractive. Definitely. When, you're a person who happens to sit on their binder full of stamps, but also that aspect of increased scarcity, increased rarity, increased value, that's off the table now. So what does the space look like with that?
I wouldn't say it's off the table, because you're already seeing a lot of projects that are, for example, Street Fighter just came out on Wax not long ago. And you're seeing a lot of gamification built in that encourages burning.
Yep.
So, and I mean, you're incentivized to burn your cards basically to increase scarcity for the entire set. So there's that. But let me throw a crazy idea that I have that I want to see somebody do. I mean, preferably I'd like to see us at EOS Detroit do it, but I don't feel like this is like an idea I came up with, so I don't feel like it's owned by anybody really, but it's just an open source idea. But one of the options you have on Wax is these assets can be mutable. They're mutable assets that, as when you mint them, they can be changed by the account that does the publishing. So I have this idea that and it came to me basically as a combination of working on Garbage Pail Kids and also being stuck in a pandemic. So I started thinking about, what if we did this thing? This is totally doable. The technology already exists. It's not like a long stretch. So I was thinking, what if we had, say, a virtual comic book convention, right?
Yeah.
And let's say we had 1,000 virtual booths, and me and Sword Draws, I don't know if anyone in the chat can pull him up and like throw his link into the chat, just because he deserves to be followed. He's kind of my partner in crime in the Garbage Pail work we're doing, but it's SWARDDRAWS. But anyway, he's on Hive, awesome dude. But let's say hypothetically, Adam and I had a table at this virtual comic book convention. And what if we did this thing where, someone that bought like a base card, because like everybody that opens Garbage Pail Kids gets some bases, and they're not really worth that much, unless they're like super early mint. But let's say you had like a 167, a number 167, and it wasn't really that great. what if you could pay a certain amount of wax, maybe $100 or $50 or something like that,
Right.
and you could actually transfer that mutable asset to the artist, or at least the artist could have access to your wallet for the sake of this thing. Maybe you could do a sandbox thing or whatever. But the bottom line is it's a transferable mutable asset that you can give to the artist. And then I could use my iPad Pro to go into Procreate and really quickly just do an autograph that personalize it. Just say, thanks for picking up this card, right?
I love
then
this
really
idea.
quickly, really quickly run it through After Effects with a template that's already installed or that's already like established. And then it basically does an overlay of your autograph on that person's base Garbage Pail Kid card. And then you could transfer it back once the, basically the escrow of whatever you charge happens. Because that's to me going to be the future of digital collectibles, like especially ones that are on a blockchain.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because it takes out some of the aspects of, okay, I'm going to go to an actual convention and somebody autographed it. And, well, we don't know who did that Sharpie, but all of a sudden now you've also got that digital chain of custody where you can see it went into their possession.
It's verifiable.
So yeah, this is really interesting in terms of, a hot topic, obviously, in the NFT space is, well, who's gonna host it forever? It's all gonna go away. And so we often talk about, well, what the token itself is attached to, if we think of it as an image file, could potentially be changeable. It could be changeable.
Right.
It's that aspect of the ledger, keeping track of it.
Yeah, when you mint on Atomic right now, that's one of the options is you can choose for it to be mutable or immutable. So so there's a lot of possibilities with that. And obviously, like, these blockchains are not just NFTs. There are a lot of other transactions. So no, these servers are not going to go away. I mean, as long as there's an incentive to run those servers, the incentives for that should be right. But I mean,
and this comes up a lot. I mean, people forget that, IPFS and that they can actually take part in that and help pin their own works or pin their own collections. And, we're slowly opening people's eyes to this. It's very easy to say, well, what happens when the EMP comes? Well, when the EMP comes, we're all fucked, and I'm going to take my guns and I'm going to go sit on top of that house. And if you walk by with food, you might be in trouble. Let's not go that far yet. But I will say, I just want to kind of shout out to chat. So you were saying, oh, hey, go check out Sword Draws. Well, that picture of Dan Levy is amazing, and I've never seen someone so delightfully fluffy look so badass in my entire life. That is a very masculine portrait of
Sword
Dan
is
I fucking
Adam.
love it.
I've known Adam. Like he honestly, we're like our souls are shared because I met him at this like really kind of crappy little comic book convention in Minneapolis that happens every year. And I would go to these conventions with like 40 or 50 bucks in my pocket only to buy from independent artists. Like I was looking to buy shitty comic zines basically, because that's what I like. And and then I found Adam and he just happened to have several of those. So I bought a bunch and, we kind of became friends, but we've stayed in touch over the years, but it's funny because it's like, he's way younger than me, but I'm like always pulling him into this world. Like he's, doing all kinds of, I'm the one that's getting him to do like all the digital stuff. And, eventually with when the Tops, like the Garbage Pail Kids job came up, I called him because I knew he was capable, but I knew he was also, he's super talented, but I also knew if I said like, I need these by this date, he can do it. Like he can get them done on a deadline. And not to get off on a tangent or too far down
the entire
a rabbit hole or anything. Yeah, but just from an artist point of view, like that's a totally different thing than talent. Your ability to hit deadlines, unless you're working for yourself and if you're in a position where you're able to do one piece of art a month or at your pace, that's great. But if you live in a world that's more commodity based, like collectibles or working for a company like Tops, you need to be able to hit deadlines. That is the first and foremost thing.
And that is something that a lot of artists struggle with.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, it's the magnum opus. Every artist thinks that the thing they start is going to be their career-defining piece of work, and like you have to just let that shit go. It's not,
Ain't that the truth? Well, I have to say, I'm actually very intrigued by the idea of mutability and the option to sort of adopt mutability inside a minted NFT. But so that's a perfect kind of example of why it's okay that there are multiple blockchains. It's okay that there are multiple projects, and it's something that's so fierce in this space. And let's face it, we're nothing but meat sacks spinning on a marble through the universe, and tribalism is something that's so strong within us, and it's hard when we have this exciting space full of cool people doing creative things. We want to be like, Hive is the best, ETH is the best, Wax is the best. If you don't have Bitcoin, you're an idiot. We are tribal at heart, but
Sure.
I'm certain anyways that one of my sort of big dreams is that people start selecting things that empower whatever it is that they want to put into the world a la carte from blockchain tech, because Hive to me makes a lot of sense when we talk about creating a social presence and that brand and that humanity that you connect with when you look at someone's art, their drawing, their story, their writing, or even when you say, I'm going to pay you to do X thing. That's very important, and Hive really encapsulates that. And now here's Wax that's, kind of really delving into why do we give a shit about collectibles, and how do we create a blockchain that empowers you to really take all of those things from a very tangible, known equation and rebuild them into something bigger and more exciting than that. And Bitcoin still exists as a store of value, and maybe you are using ETH because I don't know, something Visa. I don't know, but how do you feel in this space? Do you think it's going to be we're moving towards one chain to rule them all, or are you more of the mindset that it makes sense to use the tools that are available and kind of build this dashboard, if you will, that lets you do what you want?
We're definitely moving towards a future with interoperability and with bridges between everything. And I mean, like invisible bridges, you won't even have to think about it. And with that, I mean, obviously the tribalism is going to go away, but I mean, we'll find other reasons to be tribal and fight with each other.
Of course we will.
But
I see John just leveled up in the chat, so continue talking. I'm going to kill this beer because I always drink. I normally take a shot, but sadly the bourbon bottle remains empty. I haven't made it out to the liquor store, so I'm going to kill this drink while we talk a little bit more about interoperability. Now, Wax, and this may or may not be sort of your niche of Wax, but Wax is in a lot of ways already integrating with Hive via Splinterlands. So do you think you're going to see more and more of this?
Yeah, you will. And I mean, there's already some really, really impressive bridges. For example, like when the first Garbage Pail OS 1 came out, that was on a particular standard and that it, when the Atomic Hub standard came out, that's what they released OS 2 on, which is a much better standard for NFTs, but they've already gotten bridges for both of them. So if you bought OS 1, you can actually bridge them to OS 2, no problem. I mean, it's all on the blockchain, it's all on the Wax blockchain, so it's not near as complicated as it would be. But
but still different protocols within that chain.
Different protocols that were able to be bridged, and I mean, everything I've heard is that they're very, very close to a Wax ETH bridge, which would be, amazing.
So we have sort of this when we look at our wrapped tokens. We've got wrapped tokens that can be, it's not a perfect bridge in terms of like Thorchain is doing native token to native token.
Right.
Straight out. But Hive does have smart contracts for both ETH, a wrapped token over to ERC20, but also now on the BSC. So that's a mover and a shaker in this space, and maybe not particularly artistic, but we got to ask the question because we love to be shit disturbers. How do you feel about a BSC basically saying ETH is stupid, let's make it but cheap? And do we love that it's essentially a centralized exchange that's running it? I mean, is that a big scary thing, or is that a nerve-wracking thing?
Any sort of centralized exchange scares me. I mean, look what happened with Steam and where that went. That was, I mean, not to okay, let me just say, last year, you know how everybody had their like thing they wanted to do when they realized their life was basically going to be imprisoned. My thing was I was gonna write a book, a novel that I wanted to write for years. That's really inspired by blockchain. And so yeah, I did that last year. I wrote a novel, and honestly,
Put it
the
in the
shit.
chat.
Yeah, it's not.
Pimp
It's
it.
in. It's the editor has it right now, so it's gonna be released. But it's
Cool.
very very inspired by all of this.
Right. Okay.
So and mostly, honestly, mostly like DPAWS is like, but anyway, the shit that happened. Yeah, somebody.
I love that poster. I love it.
That sold out fast. I like that was like
it was fabulous.
Yeah, I that was just my test that like let me just see how this goes, and that thing sold out super fast. But anyway, the shit that happened between Justin Sun and Ned, and then by proxy, CZ with Binance and everything, and well, I mean, I'm drawing a blank. What's the other one? The other exchange?
Oh,
the one that Justin Sun owns.
Poloniex.
Poloniex with a P. Yeah. But like all that shit was so much crazier than what I'd written in the book. Like I thought I was writing a very, very fantasy based version of this, and that shit was so much crazier. But yeah, that's a great example of why centralized exchanges are very not good for the community. But look at the community we persisted, and we survived. But
we did.
Yeah,
and
I don't know.
It was an interesting and scary time. I'll certainly say. To kind of be a block producer.
Yeah. Let me set the stage a little bit with what my life was like when that happened.
Please.
So I actually was with Roadscape.
Yeah.
During that time. What's that?
So I didn't realize that you guys hang out. I haven't talked to him in a bit now. How is he?
He's fantastic. He's doing really good. But I was actually at his house. And there was these moments that were just so surreal, because this was after Ned had sold and everything.
Yeah.
And I woke up in the morning, and I wasn't like eavesdropping. I was like getting out of there. Actually, I was like leaving. Yeah. But like there was moments where like when I was in the bathroom, the door between the bathroom and his room, he was on a conference call with Justin's son. And I was just like, this is fucking crazy. Like to be this rooted in like something that's so close to my heart, and to see the turmoil. And and then I basically left. I had a bunch of shoots for like 2 days, and when I came back, I woke up that morning and I had like 47 text messages. Yep. And that was the morning that the sock puppets were installed.
Yeah.
And I remember Roadscape wasn't up yet, and I just texted him and I just said, I'm gonna leave for the day. Let me know if you need anything. And I just like walked out of the house because I knew he had a lot of serious shit to like think about. So I just left. And but man, was that was a crazy time. And it was, you always think about like the 7 degrees of separation thing, and it was just very surreal for me to be that close to like ground level what was happening. And I remember there was a little coffee shop in called the Buzz Mill, and I remember hanging out on there. And actually I was in Discord, and that's when you and all the other witnesses were having these like all hands on deck, like what are we gonna do meetings.
Yep.
It was basically like and that was beautiful, because that was the genesis of like what has made Hive so damn decentralized. It was these like literal, like, I don't want to say unorganized, because that's really not the right word I'm looking for, but a lot of times
it was a little bit.
Yeah, it was like I remember they called me Dan, and like actually that was the first time I really got like one-on-one with Midlet, who's become a very, very close friend of mine. I love him. And it was just an exchange of ideas. It was just everyone basically putting, making proposals on the spot for how we were going to deal with this, and how we were going to preserve the thing that was so close to our hearts. And what a crazy time. But but anyway,
I have to say, please, the next time you see Roadscape, I won't use his name, please give him a hug for me, because
I will.
It's so funny, because I have like this this incredibly vivid memory of us standing on top of a building in Thailand, just looking out over the city skyline and talking about how excited we were for everything that he was building inside of the community space. And, you know, we were talking about this. It was just like this, like, no sleep, full of alcohol, like, like excitement. And there were no glimmers, and that was in November. There were no glimmers of what was happening to come. And I honestly, I think, and we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the show, was I think that part of the reason that I have fallen so heavily into whatever the hell the role that I encapsulate now is because I've met so many of these people. And, you know, there's a dude on chain right now who's doing some blockchain forensics, and he's proved that we're literally all one person, and every, you know, witness account is managed by one person, and none of us exist. But I can say that I've met a huge portion of the top 20, the top 30, even going into the top 40. I've met them, and I've drank with them, and I've been mad at them, and some of them have become these dear friends. And so I think that in a lot of ways, the reason that Hive just, you can't fucking kill it, is because whether or not we agree, we disagree, there is this grudging friendship and respect there. And a lot of it does come from going through such a ridiculous shit show, and sort of feeling like this underdog, when in reality the crypto space in general is the underdog. It's not just one blockchain. And you know, we had this crazy story, but imagine for a second if we actually saw this ripple outward to where people are almost to the idea of like what people took away from the GameStop stuff. What does it look like to people who don't really understand how big the kind of fiat shit show is?
Well, they'll find out. They're gonna find out. You can only cut $1 trillion checks for so long. So yeah, they're gonna find out, and that's why I'm hedging everything on like the future with, like, you know, crypto. But I've said like after Hive survived, like there is no doubt in my mind, like Hive is the most like fucking punk rock blockchain in existence. Like the survival story is so inspiring and incredible. And you know, because like Telos on EOS.io is that they kind of tout themselves as like the most decentralized blockchain. And you know, I don't know. I guess I don't know enough of the workings of like the witness structure in Hive. I don't pay as much attention to it as I mean, I know it's more decentralized than Steemit, you know, well, but
for example, and actually Inertia probably has better numbers. I know if we're looking at it, we must be over, when you count a backup witness every block production round plus the top 20, like let's assume they haven't changed in a day, it's more than 80 different witness nodes a day that are participating in block production, and that are, you know, that's literally not even the whole schedule, but that's like a daily amount. It's more than 80 separate witness servers, you know, geographically diverse. It's kind of wild. And Inertia is like my bestie, who when I am struggling at not feeling smart, sometimes I'll be like, and then he'll throw some little nugget in chat, and it'll either be helpful or it will be making fun of me. So 50-50 chance what we get, but he says at least 80. So that's
and it's just the way it survived too. Like I remember, I think I had something along the ballpark of like 20,000 Steam back in the day. And but my brother, Custom Nature, he's on Hive and Steemit. And you know, I told him about it back when, you know, the early days of like Steemit. I was like, dude, I am making stupid money on this site, you should really check it out. So he got on there, he started posting, and you know, he accumulated something in the ballpark of 10 or 15,000 Steam power. And you know, but at some point, mostly during the bear, he just dropped off like a lot of people did. You know, for me, I kept posting during all the bear markets because it was a principle. You know, I was like, in fact, it's weird because I have a little over 40,000 followers on Instagram, and I post about once every 2 months.
Yeah.
But I post on Hive every single fucking night. And it's not necessarily that because I'm making money on there, but I'm making something. There's some sort of transactional, validation of my worth. It's like, here, you're doing this cool art, so we're gonna give you this. Plus, it's decentralized. It's not owned by the Zuckerbergs or Zuckerberg or whatever. But I was thinking of the Winklevoss, but I guess they own quite a bit of the other blockchain. But
I think it's fair.
But anyway,
robot army.
It sucks. He's a robot. But anyway, like that's why I continued to post. I mean, I make $10 or $12 a day or whatever during the really bad bear market, but it's long term that ended up being, I think, the thing that like kind of proved my salt with the community is like, hey, this dude's gonna keep posting even when things are not good. But when the hostile takeover happened, and there was that little window where we were trying to gain back just enough witnesses to fork, like that was amazing.
I don't think I think I slept in that period. I think I slept about 2 hours in 4 days. I was honestly mentally unhinged by the time
my brother over. So my brother ended up powering down everything. He had about 12,000 steam power that was completely powered down, and he was just waiting for it to. I mean, he was at that point, he was not really invested anymore, and he hadn't posted in probably almost a year, and he was kind of just waiting for a pump so he could sell it. And I called him, and I'm like, dude, you would not believe this shit that's happening. And I explained the whole hostile takeover and everything, and again, my brother's not like an inherently altruistic person. I don't, but when I told him the story and I told him how we were like grasping to try to gain back just enough witnesses to save the chain, my brother powered up all of his Hive or his steam power. He powered it all back up, and he voted for his witnesses and everything just to make sure we stayed in. And I don't know, that's just like such a cool story. Like I've known my brother my whole life, and he's not really that kind of person. Like he'd just be like, oh, fuck it, But like whatever it was, there was some sort of magic there that he himself as a community member wanted to preserve if he could. So he powered it all back up, all his stake, and started voting. And I know lots, like hundreds and thousands of other people did the same thing. Absolutely. And that got us to the point that we were able to fork and save Hive.
Yeah. So here's a question that, again, we're doing the tangent thing. And isn't that always the way? So you mentioned, and this does happen a lot, and I think there's probably a couple reasons for it, but let's kind of come back to, hey, he wasn't feeling invested in posting anymore, and he kind of just dropped off, and he was really only here while the getting was good. And that's not a bad thing. We're not shaming him, because that tends to be the standard experience right now. And so, what do you think it's going to take for people to really move beyond that level? Because like you said, all of a sudden, here's this experience, this story, this community, this shared thing. And so deep down somewhere, he was feeling that connection to the blockchain, to the community. But it took an extinction level event to bring it out. But in general, before that, it wasn't enough. And we've seen that across blockchain. Every time there is a bull run, people come in going, yeah, I totally love this. I'm here forever. And then as soon as the bull run's over, they're like,
Well, two things. One is short-term, one is long-term. The long-term one is going to just be general adoption, which is a slow process. Just social acceptance, like as time goes on, people will just accept that this is here to stay, and this is a technology they should probably figure out. But shorter term, there's just barriers that are just going to keep people away from this. Like, for example, one of the things that first made me decide I'm going to buy Wax, like I'm going to be a Wax stakeholder, was they are a custodial wallet. They hold your keys, so you literally just sign up with an email and a password. That is something that has to be done. One thing I've kind of looked into recently, just because I really like the guy's mind, is Luke Stokes is doing. He runs the FIO network. And he's working on a lot with the FIO protocol to get us to a point where you can literally send a transaction to Lars dot, well, it's probably
Yeah.
a bad example because Kommienezuspadt is pretty long, but you could send one to money at Crimsonclad and just get your, and it,
Yeah.
in time there'll be a point where I don't think it even matters what the chain is. I mean, you could just send, whatever, you probably have intermediaries of basically like a block trades type exchange where you could just, it doesn't matter. Like you could just send Bitcoin, and if you want to, it'll show up in whatever denomination you want in your
Yeah.
wallet. But Luke is doing a lot of work with that, but we're going to need a lot more things like that, more custodial wallets, because people, I mean, normal people, my friend Vintage Vandal, so she's a really, really kind of world-renowned pinup artist or pinup model and a like designer, and
Yeah.
she's amazing. If anyone wants to look her up on Hive, it's / at vintage vandalism, VANDI. It ends with IZM, but
okay.
throw her up in the vandalism, and you'll get her in the chat. But she's great. But if you look at her first couple posts there, I think 3 of them she did. Her first one made like $400 and $500 or something like that, and
4 years old. Her post.
Yeah, 4 years old. She made that money. I walked her through the process of transferring it to her bank account. She did. It showed up, and she couldn't believe it. She's like, "Oh my God, it's really here." Mm-hmm. Never fucking posted again. Like there is just, I mean, like, because to me that was always my thing. Is I was thinking, you need to get people to a point where they see that this post will result in actual tangible money. So I would walk people through that process and think that's when they would have the same red pill moment I did. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, most people, that's not true. Even if you get it there, it's not true.
Isn't it fascinating that it's always these bull runs, these crazy prices that draw them in, and yet the money isn't enough? Isn't that interesting that even that
it was for me? I guess I grew up poor enough that I was like, even if it was like $18, I was like, I'm here for it. I was like, it did not matter. It was $18 I didn't have before that moment, and it was $18 I didn't get from Instagram or anything. And I mean, just as the story goes on, I mean, all my friends now are just getting absolutely harassed and deleted off of Instagram for like, just like, it's not even explicit anything. It's just like a back, or like, they shaking their ass in front of the camera, and they think it's soliciting sex. And it's like, there's just so much more of a need for like decentralized social.
It's also ridiculous because, I mean, somebody brought this point up the other day, is that Playboy, is big company. They're doing the exact same thing to the nth degree, and they don't get touched on Instagram. Yeah. Whereas like
Playboy,
an individual model or an independent model. Yep. So I totally agree. It's so interesting that there's this perfect storm of reasons to move to decentralized alternatives or use them in conjunction, and yet it just hasn't clicked naturally yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to resist going off on this, like, kind of anarchist.
Well, you're gonna have to, because we got about 20 minutes left.
Yeah, well, so I mean, we're just getting to this point where the whether it's publishing or whether it's corporations or anything. I mean, I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole with the COVID thing, but I really feel this was an egregious overreach of power. And totally. When you look at the companies that profited or prospered during COVID, during these lockdowns, it's all the same companies. It's fucking Netflix, it's Amazon, it's companies that deliver free with workers that are underpaid and undervalued. And then when you look at it from a publishing point of view, like you said, the people that are like men and women that are like basically, just trying to survive with like an OnlyFans account are getting banned off all these platforms. Yet you're allowed to see literally like on the Playboy Instagram page, you can see a chick riding a guy on a horse. Like she's on him, riding him with her tits out, and it's like, that is okay. But again, you look at it, that's Playboy. And there's, the incentive.
It's who the arbiters of okay are now. And unfortunately, we have not realized that this last even like decade or two has simply been giving them so much power. And yeah, Clyde, we're not saying that tits aren't porn. We're just saying it's really interesting. And we know this, obviously, everybody on Hive, everybody who's listening right now, everybody's checking it out. We know that, you know, tits on Playboy and get side boob on another model.
Well,
they're not the same.
On Playboy, there's a corporation that's profiting from that, and the thing that's resulted out of this pandemic and everyone opening, everyone having an OnlyFans account is, I don't think those companies like seeing those people independently profit. They pisses them off. That money should go to them. So,
that's been porn's job for as long as we can. This is its own giant topic in general. Is here are people who often are marginalized for being either sex work or sex work adjacent, but they're the ones who are already kind of on the outs. So they say, fuck it, we're going to try a new thing. Because what are you going to do? Get rid of us? Like, you're already trying to drive us away. That's cool. We'll go make our own blockchain with hookers and blow. And so, they are starting something that will not stay only encapsulated to them. But the problem is each time you have somebody in this position who's already marginalized in one way or another, they build a new space for themselves, and then a corporation comes in and says, get the fuck out of here, and takes it over, and they have to start again. And I feel like, is decentralization the end point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think the end point? I think, I mean,
we crowd them out here?
I have a bias, obviously. I think
absolutely.
That's the way it's, but well, it's actually, I guess, to be fair, it's one or the other. I think we're gonna live in a predominantly decentralized, future, or it's just gonna be completely authoritarian pseudo governments that are owned by about 6 corporations that basically decide everything. You know what it is? It's the company store. We've seen this before. Like with, that's exact. You have these workers that, are underpaid, undervalued, in horrible conditions, that are expected to spend the money they make on the company store to live. Right. That's where we are. I know.
And Swoop would be really happy because I'm rereading one of my old Buckminster Fuller favorites, 9 Chains to the Moon. And at the time, the 9 Chains to the Moon reference is if everybody on Earth joined hands, we could reach to the moon 9 times and back. Mm-hmm. But one of the reasons I like it so much is he's talking very specifically about a lot of the stuff that we're exploring now. Now, is it all relevant? No, but a lot of it comes down to sort of how our debt after, World War II really started mounting, and how started basically shaping how we've been controlled within our society. And that debt mechanisms are essentially really just the constructs of a couple corporations, a couple governments, to just make sure that we stay in our lane. And in his book, which is obviously written way back when, he talks about free media, and specifically the television, as being a way of breaking free from that. Now, obviously, not necessarily the case, but it's pretty easy to start thinking that a decentralized solution that really takes off, interoperable decentralized solutions that really start forming a new community, are going to take that place of kind of breaking us free from being in debt and accepting being in debt and understanding our lives in the context of being in debt and controlled. Right. I mean, in that way, do you think that because it's not an if, when we see corporations entering this space and knowing that they have fiat resources that are still pretty tied up with decentralized and blockchain and crypto resources, i.e. look at fucking Doge right now, so they come in with the big money guns, what happens in the decentralized space?
Well, it'll come down to the architecture of the individual project, I guess. It's this age-old dichotomy. It's like the more decentralized the project is, the less, by nature, but the less organized it is in respects of being able to get things done. That's really one of the difficult things with like my period of time that I was trying to do some work with Telos, is like they are certainly more decentralized than EOS. You cannot you know, they basically
Yeah.
kind of tout themselves as like the pirates of like the EOS IO world. But like, holy shit, man, we're just trying to like I wasn't even getting paid. I was just trying to do like some community, you know, involvement with some art, and it's just like, you know, you'd submit something and you get like 3 people that loved it, and 3 people that hated it, and 4 people that, you know, thought it would be good, but it needs to change like this. And it just, it's like,
I feel
it's just
attacked.
amazing. Yeah, I'm sorry. But I mean,
we see a bit of this
that's
in
the
Hive.
nature of it though. Like these, you know, that's what the future of something like that's going to look like. I mean, you think
Mhm.
of the same dichotomy with like security. It's like you get to choose: is it more secure or is it more convenient? You get to choose,
Uh-huh.
and there's a spectrum. This is the least secure, most convenient, and then this is the antithesis of that. And you get to decide where on that spectrum you would like to, where your comfort level is. And that's kind of what I think the future is going to look like as these companies try to move in. And you know, it's the old, I don't remember who made the quote. I think it's oftentimes mistaken for like a Gandhi quote, but it's not Gandhi. But it's like, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We're
Yeah.
in the about, you know, we're about to win. You know, when Elon basically gets our back and starts putting billions of dollars of his own money, and then all these other companies FOMO into what he's doing, you know, we're pretty, you know, and this has been a sustainable, you know, we've been above $50,000 Bitcoin for months now. And, you know, I think we're in the win phase, but then you like, when it becomes less about the value of a token and more about, you know, the impact of these projects and how they're going to, what their relationship is going to be between the proletariats and these like huge companies like Amazon, you know, that, I mean, it's really going to come down to the fundamentals of, did that particular blockchain project think these things through in advance?
Yeah.
You know, what was the end goal? That's actually one thing I love about Hive is like, I think Hive's heart was in the right place from the very beginning. Same, and I mean, same thing with Bitcoin, but not in a usability point of view. I mean, Bitcoin is, like you said earlier, it's a store of value, and I think it's generally accepted to be a store of value.
Yeah.
But you know,
It's
Hive
funny though.
was
That's not how it started either, though. I mean, there was
right.
everybody. Look at our buddy with the pizza, and everybody was like, "Hey, I just want to pay someone else for whatever thing I want to pay them for, and not have you up in my business. You can look, you just can't touch." And that was
Yeah.
very valuable. But that's not where the story went. That's not where
Right.
things went. Yeah.
But when I think of like, you know, where were these projects, where was the heart of these projects when they were created? Like what was
Sure.
the genesis idea or the mission of those projects? And like, it's one thing I really do like about Hive, Hive's intention from the very start. Now for example, let me give you an example that's like kind of counterintuitive to me saying why I bought a bunch of Wax. Wax's intention is to basically cozy up with all these corporations. No doubt, like you can't deny that. They want to make a lot of money, and they want to do it with Disney, and they want to do it with Topps, and they want to do it with, you know. So I guess it depends on like what your intentions are. Like, what do you want out of that? Like for me with Wax, I like collectibles.
Yeah.
And I've always been into nerd culture and shit like that and comics and stuff. So yeah, I like when they start releasing Walking Dead, you know, tokens or packs, I want a part of that. And I'd like to profit from it, not just from a collectibles point of view, but I want to have the token. So when they release that project, I want to make money from it. Like actually next Wednesday, Major League Baseball's dropping on
Right.
I'm not a baseball fan. I could care less, but I mean, it's really good if you're a stakeholder in Wax.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as far as Hive, you know, I really like, I think I've seen videos of Ned at some stupid Las Vegas conference talking like a dick about, you know, trying to transition to you know, an advertising model and stuff. But like, let's not conflate like Hive and Ned's original idea with what Hive is now, you know, the surviving Hive.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hive is just really, I think it's, when it came down to it and the shit got real, our only intention was to survive, like to keep the community alive. That's it. Like I don't think there was a goal to be profitable. I don't think there was a goal to do anything other than just, you know, for us to hold on to something and preserve something that meant so much to us. And that's beautiful. Like that's the most beautiful reason for a blockchain to exist.
It is. But you know, you touched on something in there that that actually I don't think is a bad thing. And even Cly has just touched on it in chat. And so one of the things, and gosh, we're gonna have to kind of keep an eye on the time. We're doing pretty good. We got about 10 minutes left. But I just recently, earlier this week, I was on with Why Libertarian, and we were talking a little bit about NFTs and blockchain and that direct sort of correlation with voluntarism, like being voluntary in whatever it is, your goals, your ideas, your life, your work. And so this is something that I think is really important. So Clyde's saying, well, I don't like NFTs. I mean, I don't see the value in them. And that's okay. And finally, for once, here's blockchains, whether it's Wax, whether it's Hive, whether it's EOS, whether it's whatever. Here is blockchain saying, here's a thing that only you can choose to opt into. You can be around them, you can build community with them, but if you don't want to partake, you don't have to. And so what you were saying there was, well, here's Wax. Wax is going in, and what they want to do is, connect with these big corporations. But here it is again. You have your control over your wallet. You have that sort of voluntary aspect of, well, I do want to work with Tops, but I don't want to work with Disney, or I don't want to collect any of these things, but I want to look at some of these independent Bernie Mitten drops. And so all of a sudden, these corporations that are so used to having absolute control over the things that you engage with, suddenly you get kind of like a space. Mm-hmm. You can step back and be like, you're here, but I don't have to choose to engage with you, to consume your products, and you actively have to come into my community and impress me. You no longer have direct control over my wallet or over, and I think that's fascinating, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's a very foolish take to believe that these 6 companies that rule the world will just roll over and die. It won't happen. But how we coexist with them is changing. And so I'm actually quite excited to hear you kind of talk about that spectrum of security and risk as we know it in terms of today's existing world. I could keep all my cash under my mattress. I could have a, savings, or like, what do you call them, a security box, or I could have a fully managed asset portfolio with a bank who's insured, And there's that spectrum, but there's still aspects that we can't control. And when you take that spectrum into the blockchain space, that spectrum becomes a lot wider, and there's a lot more places that you can kind of slot in and decide where you want to fall, and that's really cool.
Yeah. It's a spectrum, and everyone's like, I mean, I don't think most of this I don't think the mainstream world is going to be interested in holding key pairs. I just don't think that's ever going to be a thing. So I think custodial
services helping custody or multi-sig, or there's a company Justine's working for now that basically is like a managed corporate multi-sig, so that you still have the ultimate control over your account. But if you're a little nervous, you can actually kind of have somebody there to just help back you up and walk you through it. And we're going to see more of this. And you were mentioning that Wax is, right now, your keys are custodial. So the idea is we're going to see sort of some solutions for that.
Well, it's less, that's the thing, is it's less centralized, or it's less decentralized. It's more centralized. But and I've actually already seen instances where people chose something other than Wax because they wanted something more decentralized than Wax is. But on the other hand, it's damn convenient if you're an end user, and especially an end user without the tech chops to hold your own keys. So, but as far as to your comment about the, like, what are things going to look like with these, big corporations, however few of them are left and, end up surviving, I do think you're going to, as this becomes more of a ubiquitous, not technology, but philosophy, like the idea of decentralization. I think you're going to start to see revolt against these big companies, because they're going to do what they've always done, just like Facebook. They're going to try to grab more, and as they feel something slipping through their fingers, they'll grip tighter. They always do, and they're incapable of just letting something go. And if they feel like they're losing that kind of control on consumers and the rest of real world, they're going to probably try to clamp it down and lock it down harder. And I think you're going to see a lot of like, because of a lot of these protections are in place, because these are, you know, more or less decentralized projects. You're going to see, you know, the ability to basically revolt and basically protest those companies. And I think you're going to see, you're going to see some collapse. The ones that are incapable of evolving with this new world, this Web 3.0 kind of world, you're going to see some just, you know, they're going to fade into obscurity, just like MySpace. You know, they're going to
wouldn't that be
think,
nice?
yeah, it'll happen. I mean, you'll see, and you'll see competitors, you know, you'll see competitors arise that see an opportunity. It's an attack vector where they can say, hey, you know what? We can do the exact same thing Amazon's doing, but we can do it in a decentralized way. And this is unfortunate that we're at the end of the 2 hours, because I'm not going to get into this. It's way too long. But one thing, I live in Minneapolis. And even as we were doing this podcast, I heard military helicopters fly over my house. So one thing, I sit on this. Yeah, it's crazy here right now. One thing that I sit on it's a subcommittee of the city council. Okay. And it's called the Green Zone. It's more like an environmental justice thing, but it deals with racial justice and everything. Yeah. But this has been a project that's been kind of in my mind ever since the Minneapolis City Council came out and made these public statements that they were going to defund the police, and they voted unanimously to defund the police. Well, here's the problem: now the voters like expect that, and they have no fucking plan. They have no idea how to do it. And I've been thinking, I mean, honestly, a lot of these ideas came from the novel that I wrote last year, but there's no reason those ideas couldn't work in the real world. So me and Mata, Mark Bailey, and Lovejoy. I'm not sure if you know Brandon Lovejoy, but we've been getting together and we've been basically workshopping what a replacement of a police force would look like. And it still involves police, but it also involves basically, in some ways, a very delegated proof of stake or DPoS style architecture that gives the community about 50% of the power. And if there's problems or if things go wrong, in real time, they can go on, revoke their endorsement, and officers can come off the force and new officers get moved into place. Now it's a way more complicated than that. Maybe in the future we can talk about it, because it is a cool idea, and it actually involves like NFTs too. There's basically a citywide issued NFT, which I think Mark has been calling a CAT, which is a community approval token. Okay. They're issued by the city, but they go to the community or community leaders, or actually anyone with an account. And if you have an interaction with a police officer and it goes well, you alone have the ability to issue that to the cop, and that's an incentive. If the more of these community action or community approval tokens you hold, the higher you fall on the kind of incentivized payout structure. And it's something that would incentivize cops to not be dicks and not to be reckless, like to care more about these kinds of things. It's not a architecture that necessarily does completely away with police. It just changes the idea of what police are. But anyway, that's what I'm saying is that same model can actually apply to corporate structures. That's the neat thing about it is, as we've been developing this, I think me, Mark, and Lovejoy, basically, it's a governance model. And I think me, Mark, and a lot of it's kind of based on if you've been keeping up with what Dan's doing with Eden OS. It's a lot of it pulls from that. But there was a moment when we were talking about it. Wow, this could apply to almost any relationship where one side of the relationship is oftentimes oppressed.
Yeah.
Because it really puts we got to wrap it up.
I was going to say, I'm not going to try and cut you off, but when that buzzer goes, then we will be off the air. So I love all of the stuff we've talked about today. Say goodbye, Lars. Drop all your information in the chat. I'm going to connect it up to the video so people can watch this afterwards. I've so enjoyed talking with you today. What a great talk. And we were supposed to have like a list of points that we hit. We didn't get to it. So wave bye, say bye. I got about 20 seconds to take us off.
See you guys. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Mwah! All right. So
Let's
for
do it
everybody
again.
else, the next time that I'll be live is Thursday night for Full Force Radio. You could find this on YouTube and on Vim TV. Wherever you need to rewatch it, I will post. But otherwise, stick around, check the schedule, and I will see you next week.